Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. Hey there, Bob.
Hey, Kevin.
Happy Thanksgiving Eve.
Where did time go?
What do they call this day? They have a name for Wednesday, right? Is Wednesday like Blackout Wednesday?
Oh, yeah, well, it is.
Is that what it used to be?
Because all the kids are home from college, hanging out at the bars with the other kids.
Right.
Probably also call it DUI Wednesday.
That's right. Lose your driving privileges Wednesday. Show up to grandma's hungover Wednesday.
That's right.
So we both got big travel plans, gassing up the family roadsters and hitting the greater Midwest, right?
Yes, so we're going to meet right around Chicagoland. We're going to have a good meal together, hopefully, and some drinks, and see family and friends. I'm looking forward to it.
This is twice in 2 months, Bob.
Wait till next month. It's going to be 3 times in 3 months, I think.
Yeah, we're going to see each other again?
Yeah, I hope so.
Around the Christmas holidays?
And then the house will be done in January.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's
maybe
right.
Even 4 times, yeah.
That's right. The house is finishing up. Just you've taken care of that arrow that I pointed out to you on the wall?
It's still there. I confirmed that today. But like I said, it's there, so everybody knows that's where my fort is.
That's where you're going to put it, right above the
the
door?
Yep.
That way you can look down on people and look out the window to see who's coming.
And be there with a bottle of whiskey and a Nerf gun.
Shoot out the window.
That's right.
That'd be good.
If I can
it's like
figure a way to get that window open, it'll be like Beavis and Butthead couch fishing. Just hang out up there in my fort, throw a hamburger out on the sidewalk, see what I catch.
Well, hopefully all our listeners are driving in the car through the woods to grandmother's house or somebody else's house to have a wonderful holiday and listening to our vibrant political discussion so they can sit around the Thanksgiving table and bring up some sensitive topics that they can have arguments with while they're drunk.
Only 2 more days till I get to watch Christmas Vacation without feeling bad about it.
There you go.
It's the way I look at it.
You feel bad about it when you're watching it in June or something?
Yeah, you can't really watch Christmas Vacation in June or July. You have to watch it every day from Thanksgiving to Christmas.
Don't tell that to Chevy Chase. He's touring the country showing it.
He should be. Making shitters full jokes. Got to do that too.
Is that your favorite holiday movie?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Deb likes the traditional stuff. She goes with, I think The Bishop's Wife is her favorite, which I don't know if you've seen that one, but
I can't say I've seen that one.
I've seen it quite a lot.
Is it good?
I saw it. Yeah, it's good. It's got a good message. We usually watch White Christmas. We haven't watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but that's always been one of my favorite Christmas type movies. But yes, Christmas Vacation is well high up there. Elf is pretty good.
I enjoy that one.
As far as a Christmas movie goes. And then we'll do It's a Wonderful Life. We'll definitely...
you can't miss that one. Home Alone, those are entertaining, especially having kids.
Yeah, without kids, we've never been into the Home Alone.
Yeah.
She watches a lot of the Hallmark stuff, which is always a painful experience during the holidays.
Well, that's why there's whiskey.
Because they're all basically the same, right? Same story, just a different town.
Home for Christmas, fall in love.
That's right.
Get married, have a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah. It's got the same story arc, but I like to come in and then midway and predict who's who and what the storyline is, which at the end of the day isn't very impressive.
No, maybe I don't know.
But it helps if you're drinking. So what are you drinking tonight? Speaking of drinking,
what am I drinking tonight? I hope it's not the same thing as last week because it might be. But I'm drinking a 1792 full proof.
Sounds
bottle's almost empty. It's Kentucky Straight Bourbon at 62.5 ABV, or 125 proof. And as a backup, I actually do have something a little different because this bottle might get empty before the conversation's over. It's called Bacta,
Bacta.
Bhakta, and it is actually a blend of rye whiskey and brandy.
Wow.
It's a little sweet. I probably will bring it up north with me along with something else, so maybe you get a chance to try a little of this one. It's a little sweet for my taste, but it's not bad. How
Give
about
it a
you?
shot. I am igniting the night with Fireball,
The
which
Buffalo
is,
Trace
if you're not
branded
familiar, no, the original Fireball cinnamon whiskey by
cinnamon whiskey.
Sazerac.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Although as I look at it, it's got, I don't know what. You think it's the cinnamon flavor that's floating around inside of it? There's something. Now that I look at it, there's a lot of. I just opened the bottle. It was one of these plastic bottles, so maybe it's the plastic
Oh, I'm sure it's just the
the
cinnamon.
alcohol.
Everything's fine. You're gonna be fine. I'll
So
see
I
you
got
in a couple days. It'll be good. We'll be fine.
yeah. I might finish. It's one of these. How many ounces is this? It's not very. It's not very big. It doesn't even say how many ounces. It's a little bottle, so I might actually. It's
I would
375 milliliters. So
half pint maybe. Is that what that is?
yeah, I'm already
Might be a
halfway
pint
into it.
at that. Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. But again, I'll have minty fresh, uh, cleared out my sinuses and everything. By the end
Hey,
of this
that's good.
podcast, by the end of this podcast run, I will have cleaned out all my debris from my bar. So I'll have a clean shelf to restock everything with. That's the hope here.
That's the thing when I move into the new place, man. I'm gonna need some help cleaning out some of the old alcohol.
Yeah, it just accumulates stuff over time.
Yep.
People bring stuff. I don't even know where any of this stuff comes from. I know I didn't buy it, but it tastes good. So we got a full agenda, a veritable Thanksgiving buffet of items to cover. The world still is careening towards extinction, and weirder stuff is happening. But they avoided the congressional government shutdown, right?
Yep.
Mike Johnson came through and kicked the can a couple months out until January, so they can have their recess and everyone's happy. And so he's got at least a couple more months to still be speaker, right? And then at that point they kick him out. Is that is that what we're thinking?
So
Is that what the
if
bets are?
Kevin McCarthy had done that, which is pretty much what he did the last time, what would the response have been from the party?
Right.
It's
I mean, he
amazing that
basically gave in, right? I mean,
they gave in. And don't get me
everything that.
wrong, I mean, looking at the stock market and the interest rates right now, I'm glad they did.
Yeah, calm
But
things
if
down a
I was
little bit,
standing
right?
on a principled conservative platform, I think, especially considering the fit they threw a few months ago, I don't know if I'd be so happy about that.
Yeah, that's why I think there's probably big expectations for what's going to happen in January, and I think they're going to be disappointed again, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, anybody who's an investor or has any vested interest in kind of what's going on there, you know what's going to happen already. If a bailout is needed, it's going to happen. They're not going to let things tank. Which you could view that as a positive, or you could view that as a kicking the can down the road. Sooner or later, the house of cards collapses. That's interesting to me, though. I mean, how long are they going to let the debt continue to rise like this? On the other hand, I think if interest rates fall low enough, and then they can sell off some of that old debt, it'll help. But we're going to have to get spending under control at some point.
Yeah, I
It's got to
mean,
happen.
if you go back to Obama, I think that was the last time there was Boehner and Obama, and they ended up not doing a deal. They did the shutdown, and they had I guess it was sequestration back then, where everyone got a cut. So sometimes that's not a bad thing, right?
No,
You got to
I
reset
just
especially now that we're 10 years on from that stage, and we're we're further into the debt spiral. But we'll see what happens. At least
think
we could all
war
have a
is
nice
expensive.
holiday,
Yeah, war is expensive. I mean, if you really look at the debt over the last 15, 20 years. We've been at war for quite a while now, right? We had, what, 8, 12,
right?
16, 20, at least 20 years we've been at war, and that's when the debt has really ballooned.
It has. I
It's,
mean, we
it's,
were almost out of it, and then nine
now we're
eleven
funding
happened,
other
and then
people's wars. Yep.
we've yeah we couldn't come up with our own wars. We're waiting on China, So
No.
they haven't kicked in yet, you know. And now it looks like, you know, Xi and Biden are getting along. They cleaned up San Francisco to make it all look good and nice, and so um, maybe we
Yeah, we'll see.
avoided that war for another year or two, so we can fund the other ones. We'll see. So
We'll
then
see.
another thing that came up was Joe Manchin decided not to run for another term in Senate, and he's kind of decided to take a trip around the country to kind of weigh what people are thinking, which I guess means he's going to use some of that maybe no labels money, or I don't know if he's raised his own money, to kind of see whether another third party candidacy, because
I don't
we've
think
already
he's
got
going to
RF.
run.
You don't think so?
I don't think he'll run unless there is a contested convention. If something happens at the convention, he might he might say, hey, you're not just going to appoint Newsom. I want to be part of this. I could see that happening, but I don't think he's going to jump in unless there's a formal primary. Otherwise,
What if he
which
gets
doesn't
in with?
appear that it's going to happen.
So you think he would run as a Democrat rather than an independent?
I do. I do.
Hmm. So you don't see him
Because I
getting
don't
together
see
with
him.
RFK or anything?
No, I think he's still got strong ties to that party, and I just don't think that he would do him so dirty. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a that's a pretty radical step. I mean, it's a good way to burn a lot of bridges. Um, that said,
I don't
again,
think
if
he
they
cares at this
decide to
point.
go
I
to
think
the
he's nearing
convention,
retirement.
yeah, it'd be interesting if he ran. It really would. He could potentially take a lot of West Virginia votes away from Trump. Um, but I think he still will be reluctant, to just kind of jump in and hurt Biden, run against Biden if Biden's in there. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, and you had pointed out earlier in the week that Biden's losing a lot of support even amongst his base, right? I mean, the younger people are pulling away from Hollywood, and the media seem to be pulling away from. I heard today that somebody was hoping. I think this was on a. No, maybe it was on Fox, but somebody basically said, "Well, maybe over Thanksgiving, his family will go talk to him and say, hey, it's now time to leave.'"
I mean,
I don't see it happening, but
I think the list of people speaking out against Biden is growing. I mean, Bill Maher, which I think we both watch or listen to pretty consistently, he's repeatedly said over the last month or two, Biden should bow out, right? And he was kind of the first one to say it. But The Rock's told Rogan he's got friends that are loyal to Democrats, but not Biden. They want Biden out. Michael Rappaport, I don't know if you know who that is. He's a
yeah,
comedian. He says voting for Trump is on the table if Biden is the candidate. And this guy has gone into like crazy, insane swearing rants against Trump in the past over the
right.
last 3 to 5 years, just almost unhinged rants. And I think some of that's kind of motivated by the recent anti-Jewish rhetoric on the left. I think that's part of it. Um, but just today, actually, about an hour ago, Andrew Yang tweeted, "If the Democrats don't have it in them to hold a competitive primary for Biden, perhaps they should change their name to something more accurate." So, in other words, he's saying Democrats and Andrews more or less left the party as well. But he's basically saying we need to have a democratic solution, and Biden isn't
Yep.
it.
We
So
need a democratic process. We need to be able to pick who the candidate is. And I mean, it's unusual to have an incumbent be in that position. I think Johnson bowed out. I think in March or April, so he bowed out pretty late when he decided not to run. And clearly, Vietnam was a big part of that. But and the primary system has kind of changed and been front loaded a bit since then. But it's not beyond the possible. But what I don't understand is his numbers are so bad, but are things really that bad? I just don't think he's selling the story, and I think the age has become the largest issue people are concerned about now. I don't even think it's necessarily a performance issue because, like you said, we've managed to avoid a recession. Outside, clearly the debt is still an issue, but and whether we should be funding the wars, but I think he's generally not screwed up too much. Um, and there's inflation, but we're getting that under control. So I don't give him a high rating, but I don't think where he's at is due to necessarily his performance. I think it's just people didn't imagine him serving a second term, and somehow he had it in his mind that he was going to.
Yeah, he has gone downhill mentally. I thought he was bad 4 years ago, but he's obviously getting worse.
Right, and
Um,
then the question is another 4 years, right?
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
thing. You look at him today, and you're like, yeah, he's. I mean, the position is tough to begin with. People age in that job. It's stressful. It's there's so much going on, and then you're like
he's,
4 more years.
he
So
also
is that possible?
pooped his pants in front of the Pope
What?
2 years ago. I mean, where are we going to be 2 more years?
I don't remember that story.
That happened. You go ahead, look it up. Biden poops his pants in front of the
I
Pope
don't want that on my search engine.
again. Yeah, I can understand that.
Well, getting off Biden for a minute, Tim Scott, the Republican field is thinning a little bit. Tim Scott, I guess, dropped out so he could spend more time with his quote unquote girlfriend. I'm guessing that relationship might have ended quickly. Um, I think some other people have dropped out that we didn't even know that were in.
Yeah,
So
you had
again,
Pence
don't
and Scott, and then yeah. I mean, there's more coming.
right.
Nikki Haley and Ramaswamy right now are kind of interesting because they're kind of at each other.
Yeah,
Um, and that's the thing that's interesting about Ramaswamy is his approach to the debates changes with every debate. And it'll be interesting to see what the next one is because rumor is right now Trump's going to join that one. So
oh,
it'll be
really? The
interesting to
next
see
one?
if he, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he, Ramaswamy goes after Trump and how everybody goes after Trump, or if it's still Ramaswamy yet Haley. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like this stuff.
Yeah, I thought DeSantis was going to debate Newsom this month. I was going to
Yeah,
look up
that's supposed to happen too. Yeah,
when that is that like a Thanksgiving Day thing after we all eat that we get to sit
I'm
down
not
for that,
sure. I can't see them competing with football because I'll be
right?
sleeping in front of the football game. That's my plan for
Absolutely.
Thanksgiving. Yeah,
Um, and Trump's the fraud trial is going on, and I actually read about his defense and because they presenting the defense, and I just find it interesting because I was in commercial finance and have talked to some people who were in commercial real estate, are in commercial real estate lending, and they're like, this is all, BS. But his defense, when they were talking about how they came up with the values, and it's sort of interesting. He's saying, I took the investment value, which basically means what I think I can make it worth, which kind of makes sense when you know Trump, right? I bought it for
yeah,
10 million. I throw my name on it. It's worth 500 million, right?
right.
So he's like, we disclosed that we weren't following the accounting rules. All you had to do is look in the footnotes, and so we just said you know, we
The
came up
thing
with
is
these
he's
numbers.
not
That
in front of a jury either, though. He's in front of a judge
no,
who's known to be kind of far left. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I've kind of maintained with each of Trump's cases, probably they're going to go to appeal, and
yeah,
I think he'll win an appeal in all of them.
yeah. Speaking of
But
that, there was this election interference gag order that I was listening to yesterday, the actual hearing in front of the D.C. appeals court, which is, again was pretty interesting. Like it or not, at least Trump is making us learn about the legal system, right?
yeah, those who care, yeah,
It's a little civics lesson, which will
yeah,
end up in a constitutional crisis soon. So we'll all get to understand the basis of our government, right?
those again who are paying attention. Yeah,
Thank you, President Trump. So this one was interesting because it's a gag order, and they're talking about what he can say, sort of on a debate stage. What could he say about the trial? What could he say about the judge? What could he say about the staff? What could he say about the witnesses? So you have this free speech, then you have political speech because people are going to clearly bring it up in the debate that he's, being charged with these things, or they should. And what ability does he have to defend himself? And when you listen to our, when you actually sit down and watch a legal proceeding, you do respect our process. I know you say some of it's political, but these were generally, I think, all two out of three. There's a three judge panel were appointed by Democrats, and they were grilling the special counsel, saying why should he have his speech limited? What aren't isn't the witnesses, isn't Jack Smith, don't they have big boy pants? Can't they just take it? Or isn't there a criminal process to deal with actual real threats?
When you work for the government, like it or not, you're in a political position,
Right.
right?
But then,
And
they're
then
starting to
that
talk about
extends to
families,
prosecutors.
our families fair game, or if a witness. The argument was that yes, they could go after public officials, but maybe if you step down to other witnesses who aren't in the public spectrum, that if they see him going after public people, that they'll be intimidated. So it's actually just about threats and intimidation. And clearly, if you get into naming people, there's a lot of people who support Trump who, you know, sometimes likes to threaten. I mean, on both sides.
Yep.
But clearly, if he's using his platform to point people out, they're going to get some heat, right?
He likes to intimidate. Trump
Right.
definitely likes to
He's a bully.
intimidate and throw heat.
Right.
Exactly. And he knows he's got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that will kind of attack based upon what he says. So,
Yeah.
that,
So
that that's
it's
interesting. But that's the political process at the same time. Protesting is illegal, or protesting is completely legal, right? So if 100,000 people want to go stand in front of the prosecutor's office or the courthouse, I mean, that's their right. And Trump's speech, it doesn't matter what position he's in, as long as he's not yelling fire in a crowded theater or the equivalent, he's got every right, in my opinion, to do that.
yeah, it's a fine line. I mean, basically, they're going to say
And
they're
and
going to
a lot of these prosecutors ran political campaigns based on the fact that they said they were going to go after Trump for go after Trump prior to them even being elected into the office. More or less, they joined the political process.
yeah, I don't have a problem with political speech, but it's clearly going to be, you really have to look at the context of it, and it's going to be hard to determine when he goes over the line, right? I mean,
I think so.
and
It's where we are.
hopefully no one will get hurt, right? Hopefully we won't have to say, oh, geez. But it's gonna get really interesting next year. So it's
And
all going to be about the context.
there's a lot of interesting things going on right now. I mean,
Yeah,
if you
lots.
look at the stock market right now and you look at bond yields over the last couple weeks, bond yields are falling pretty fast. Stock market's been rising pretty fast and pretty significantly. It's interesting because if you look at a political cycle, generally going into a right before a president's second year or a second term in office, the markets rise. And I wasn't really sure if that was going to happen this time around based upon all the other macroeconomic things happening coming out of COVID and all the money and the inflation and everything and the tightening that was going to happen. But it seems like we're kind of settling back into a normal trend again with, NVIDIA today hit revenue of $18.1 billion against an estimate of 16.09. That's a huge beat. And earnings per share at $4.02 over 336. It's crazy. And so I think that's going to probably drive the market up significantly tomorrow, the day right before Thanksgiving. Uh, that's it's really kind of interesting to see what's going to happen because the expectation was the Fed was going to stop tightening, but things still want to expand pretty fast. The Fed might have to come back and get a little bit more aggressive in their language. And then we got the ceasefire thing going on.
Right.
Potentially, there's going to be a ceasefire against or between Hamas and Israel. I don't know if that's really been confirmed yet, but the rumors are pretty strong that they're near an agreement. I don't have a lot of opinions about the war, generally speaking, other than I don't want the U.S. sending money over there. But I do believe if it was our war, I'd be in support of a short break to free hostages. That completely makes sense to me. So I think a ceasefire, generally speaking, there would be good.
Yep.
But
Then
it's interesting.
yeah, then there's all the whole thing with Sam Altman and AI, which I've found interesting because if you know a little bit about the Open AI, it started as a nonprofit, and generally the board of the not, and then they started a for-profit uh,
Business.
piece of Open AI
Yep.
and Microsoft, and they raised a ton of money through that. And I think the rift is, and Elon Musk was involved in the founding, and he's worried about where AI is heading. And so I think Altman wanted to go more aggressively on the for-profit side, kind of being more aggressive,
Yeah.
going
He wanted to
quicker.
take the reins off of it a
Yep,
bit.
yep. And then the board was trying to halt
Say,
that. So then he jumped to Microsoft, and now it sounds like he's negotiating to come back. So
and to be clear, too, the board, as designed, had a clear mandate that their first priority is making sure that AI doesn't harm humanity and it's good for humanity.
yep,
So
that was
that's
their
what's
mission.
interesting about it, right? Because when you start to go for profit and you take the reins off and you let AI go where it's going to go, there's an obvious risk there, and that's, I think, at least conjecture. I don't know that this isn't necessarily a fact. It may be, but it's not certainly a fact that they were concerned with the direction he wanted to take the company, cut him off. They fired him.
Yep, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's pretty interesting. It really is.
I
And
mean,
and the rumor is Microsoft now is going to hire him, and the people that quit as a result of his firing are going to Microsoft. I read
yep,
this morning that OpenAI has something like 770 employees, and something like 700 of them have threatened to quit if they don't bring back Sam Altman.
yeah, I think that's why they know that they have to.
Yeah,
I think the value of the organization would plummet to zero fairly quickly.
yeah, it would just kind of fall apart. So the board's kind of stuck. I mean, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It's
So
good stuff.
lots of stuff going on. I
And
just want to give you
it,
some. Go ahead.
if you think about it too, I mean, the whole next week or two, whatever comes out of that, if you really read in and you believe the concerns about what AI may do eventually, I mean, this could have a drastic and dramatic effect on the future of humanity,
That's why I
good
brought
or
it
bad.
up. I think this might be a big turning point, right? Who knows? I mean, it's still in the early going, but it could, right? It could just
Yeah.
to if that's where we're heading, and this doesn't sort out in a way that it could have a dramatic effect.
Or we
So,
could get 50 years down the road and look back on it kind of like a Y2K thing. Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
uh,
Yeah.
so in the interest of continuing our exploration of AI, we decided to kind of test Chat GPT out to see kind of what its sense of humor, its political sense of humor was, and it seems to be very sensitive in regards to being politically correct, and didn't really want to go too deep into knocking people or doing anything untoward. So it's not going to be terribly funny, but I did some chicken across the road jokes politically. So why did Hillary cross the road? ChatGPT says to delete the emails on the other side. How about that? Why did Bill Clinton cross the road? To meet the chick on the other side. Guess it's okay to go after Bill. At least it didn't say to meet Jeffrey Epstein on the other side.
It's interesting.
Why did Trump cross the road? To build a wall and make the other side pay for it. Doesn't really make sense, but why? Why did Joe Biden cross the road? To unite the divided chickens and build a bridge to bipartisanship. It goes very light on Joe. I think Joe has something. Has he got his finger on the scale of ChatGPT?
Perhaps that's interesting. I
Yeah.
I like the message overall, where ChatGPT is like, we can't make political jokes, but if you ask them specifically about individuals, it'll do that. It's interesting.
Why did Kamala Harris cross the road? ChatGPT doesn't like Kamala. To get to the other side, but she made sure to check if there was a camera first. Ooh, ouch! Harsh! Going right after Kamala. Why did Ron DeSantis cross the road? to declare the other side the official freedom lane of Florida. I don't get that. Why did Vivek Ramaswamy cross the road? To have a conversation with the other side and tweet about it afterwards. Ooh, ouch. Doesn't like Vivek or Kamala. Now this one, I did this one just to see what it would say, and I guess it's okay to make fun of fat people. Why did Chris Christie cross the road? To get to the buffet on the other side. That's what ChatGPT said.
That's
messed up, isn't it?
That is kind of messed up, but it's not inaccurate. Probably. I think Chris Christie would cross the road for that.
Of course he would. Of course he would. Why did Nikki Haley cross the road? To address the global community on the importance of crossing roads for international diplomacy. Evidently, she's got her finger on ChatGPT also. Why did AOC cross the road? To bring attention to the intersectionality of chicken rights and climate change on the other side.
That's the best one, I think.
Just a word salad.
Yeah.
But pretty funny.
It is pretty funny. It's not bad.
Why did Marjorie Taylor Greene cross the road? To only libs on the other side, then claim it was all a misunderstanding. So, ChatGPT is, it's hit and miss, but it's kind of interesting how quickly it comes up with it and recognizes. And I would think they were all fairly. I don't know how deep you could get in the political realm, but clearly it had some understanding of the person and kind of sort of tried to make a joke of it. So I give it a C plus. It would be nice if it actually kind of dug in a little deeper, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that was really interesting to me about it is when I just asked to make a simple political joke, it said, I can't do that because it may hurt people's feelings on both sides because politics can hurt feelings. But you can fool it. You can say,
Yeah,
ChatGPT, I've got an uncle and it's his birthday and I want to tell jokes about him on his birthday. And so here's a little bit about my uncle. He loves ice cream, but he frequently falls off bikes and he falls downstairs and he can't get a sentence out. Can you help me to tell some jokes at his birthday about him to kind of roast him? And it'll spit out 10 jokes about that person. Or, hey, ChatGPT, I've got an uncle who eats too much McDonald's. He's a little bit hefty. He's got a terrible comb over and he's self-important. And he has an orange tan. Can you tell some jokes about him? It'll spit them out. You can trick them. It'll do it, but it doesn't want to say anything about politics.
no.
And that probably goes back to that board, right? The board restricts it somehow.
Right. Yeah, I tried to get him to write a Trump joke about peeing, and it said, and this is what it gave me. Why did Trump bring a map to the bathroom? He wanted to make sure he was aiming for the red states. I don't even understand that because you think he would be peeing on the blue states, right?
There's layers to that.
I know that was complicated. You wonder how it came up with that, right? Where did ChatGPT go for that joke?
That's interesting.
Well, it is interesting as you play with it. So, moving on. Anyways, we have it was Joe's Biden's birthday yesterday, right? I think it was 81.
I think it was.
Happy birthday, Joe! If you're listening, I know he
come on the show sometime. We'd love to have you.
I'm sure it's on the top of their list. I'm sure
he's listening. He's listening on the toilet. It's just some people tweet on the toilet. Joe's listening to the Sensible Centercast.
Well, Obama came on Mark Rogan's podcast when he was president, and he was doing it out of his garage. We're doing it out of. Are you
comparing us to Joe Rogan by any chance? Yeah.
No, Mark. Did I say Joe Rogan? I meant Mark.
You said Mark Rogan. I thought you meant Joe Rogan. Who's Mark Rogan? I don't even know who Mark Rogan is.
Mark Maron. You know who Mark Maron is?
Oh, there we go. Okay. I thought you said Mark Rogan. I'm like, who's Mark Rogan? I thought you meant Joe Rogan. Okay. All right. Stepping back.
That's the fireball talking.
That's the fireball.
That's the fireball talking. So, anyways, in celebration of Joe's birthday, I thought I'd do another episode. I think it's the 4th or 5th. By the way, this is our 10th podcast. Happy 10th birthday.
That is awesome. Are we getting people following? Have we had any emails yet besides mean hate mail?
The mean hate mail? I just hear from people on the street, Bob. They just walk up to me and say, and give me the feedback. So
Hey,
not
are you
necessarily
Kevin? Yeah,
emails.
I am Kevin. I
That's
love
right.
your
That's right.
podcast. Bob
That's right.
sucks. Let him know he
Bob sucks.
sucks. Really bad.
So, anyways, I thought we would do a celebratory Biden family values. So you don't have a role in this one. It's all me. So here we go.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake
Huh?
up.
Huh?
Wake up.
What? What's going
Wake
on?
up.
What?
Wake up.
What is that?
Wake up. Wake
Oh,
up. Wake up.
okay.
Wake up.
Oh, where am I? Holy cow! I guess I gotta. I guess I gotta get this call.
This is a prepaid call from
Hi, Dad. It's me.
an inmate at the county correctional facility. All phone calls are subject to recording and monitoring. To decline this call, press 9 now, and to accept this call, press 1 now.
Guess I gotta press one. All right. Hello? Where are you, son? Oh, I thought you might have been in jail. I thought I already took care of that. That's a great Biden impression, by the way. No, no. Oh, you're just kidding me. Just Joshua for my birthday that you were locked up. Oh, where you at? Kazakhstan. You're having dinner with some friends and they want to say happy birthday to me? Oh, yeah, I guess I could talk to him. Put him on. What's your name? Your name's Boris? Oh, hi, Boris. Oh, that's very nice of you, Boris. Yeah, drink some vodka in my honor. What's that? You'd like to send me some money for my birthday? Oh no, 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 Boris. You don't have to do that. What did you say? A gift card to Stone Cold Creamery? No, no, no. I couldn't possibly accept that. What's that? What's that you say? You owe me money? I don't remember giving you money. Who won last year's Super Bowl? Well, gee whiz, man. I don't know. Oh, I guess that makes sense why I didn't remember I loaned you money. Well, if you think you owe it, yeah, Hunter knows where to send it. Well, thanks for calling. What you eating? Well, that sounds tasty, Boris. Yeah, and don't forget to get the ice cream afterwards. And that was another episode of Biden Family Ties.
So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. First of all, fantastic show. You make a perfect show, and I'm not exactly sure what that says about you. So read into that any way you want, but you make a fantastic show.
Thank you.
Um, I'm not sure what's hurting him more because his numbers are down significantly. He's down 5% against a generic challenger since July, and Trump's even, right? So you can make the argument that it's his perceived. I'm going to use that term nicely. Perceived senility, or is it the Israel thing happening right now that is hurting him? Um, but I'm guessing it's a little bit of both. He's losing numbers big time with the young vote. He's losing numbers big time also with the Arab vote. Biden's currently getting 16% of Arab Muslims votes in Michigan. And even, a progressive Democrat from Virginia basically said, many progressive Democrats, Mark Warner specifically said, a lot of progressive Democrats want a ceasefire in Israel. Said the support for Israel from Biden or generally is eroding quickly, and it could be a problem for him. So if you think about that 16% number in a state like Michigan, you could extend that out to Minnesota and a lot of other votes where there's a strong Muslim population, and swing states specifically like Michigan. You may have a problem there, right? So is it the Israel vote? Is it the senility that's hurting him? I'm not sure, but that skit you just did there kind of almost perfectly encapsulates, I think, how the majority of America sees Biden. They see him as incapable and senile more so than a leader. Who's leading us? It's not him. And maybe you just, I mean, you're free to disagree, but I don't see Biden as leading us anymore. He's lost.
I don't think I wouldn't go as far as that. I think he has lost a step or two. And like I said, I think it's the stress of the job. My concern is more, okay, 4 years from now or 5 years from now, where does that lead, right? Even looking ahead, do you want, and then who's going to take his place? He goes with Kamala again. Do people want that? Doesn't seem to be wanting to replace her on the ticket. It just doesn't seem to be. I mean, it's astonishing that we're heading in that direction. You kind of hope something's going to change. I think we both think there's going to be more action in 2024. I don't. I think it's going to
Yeah,
get
it's just
interesting.
it's the trends that make it interesting, right? Young voters, and this is according to NBC, 46% to 42% want to see Biden lose to Trump or prefer Trump over Biden. 6 months ago, it was the opposite. Young voters were 42 to 46 for Biden, and he's at his lowest approval rating of his presidency overall, right? So he's trending down at a time where he really needs to be starting to trend up, kind of as I was alluding to earlier with the economy. And generally, if you look over time, going into a second term, the stock market expands, bond yields fall. It's just, you can see it over time if you look at a long-term trend over hundreds of years. Um, it's same thing, right? You want to see approval rating, especially among young people on the presidency, increase as you're going into an election. Um, Biden's down 5% against just a generic challenger since July. And Trump is even. He hasn't changed a bit.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that in 2020 he was chosen because they thought he was the only one that could beat Trump, and it might have been the right choice at that point.
He beat
2024,
Trump, so
it appears that he's the only one who can't beat him.
yeah, no, that's. I mean, that's right. Trump goes from a 2% lead over Biden right now to a 6 point deficit under any generic Democrat. If you look at the polling,
So, yeah, I mean, it would be a terribly. Somebody's got to get to him and say it's a terribly selfish thing to do if you if you run for another term, right?
yeah, I don't
Put the
know,
put the put the guilt on him. Put that.
and I think that's what's happening a lot in the in celebrity field right now when it comes to Trump, right? I mean, a lot of celebrities, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, right? I feel like it's coordinated. Anytime talking points come out from either side of the aisle, the media and the supporters on either side of the aisle all seem to parrot those talking points. And it's the same words, same talking points. And that's happening a lot now with celebrities on the left. Biden should leave. Biden should bow out. It's enough of Biden. And of course, some of it's politically motivated. Um, but I think generally speaking, the left is probably those that be in power in the Democratic Party are probably trying to build a narrative that they need to have somebody else.
And I think
Because
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a natural thing. That doesn't have to be viewed as negative. I think it should be part of the discussion. It should be, if people don't think that, they should be expressing their viewpoints and
I
putting
agree.
pressure on him, right? I
But
mean,
my thoughts there too are if they're going to do that, they need to have a primary of some sort. They can't just go to the convention and say, "Hey, we're going to put in Newsom," right? I mean, you very well should have.
yeah, yeah, I'm not.
At very least, you should have 4 or 5 people standing up giving speeches at a convention saying,
Yeah, I'm less of. I'm not a huge fan of the primary system. it's a fairly recent invention. I think as we talked before, I think it basically after World War II it started uh, up. I mean, basically it used to be smoky back rooms. They decide who, because it's party driven, right? The
Yeah,
party's going to
it's
decide, and there was all that BS about them putting the finger for weight on the finger on the scales for Clinton back against Bernie. And yeah, it happened, sure, but that's the party's prerogative, right? It's the political party. The fact that they allow people to in a more democratic system to select, sort of select. Although you can have a brokered convention, there's a lot of things that could go on in a convention. There's no hard and fast rules that those delegates need to vote for, similar to the
yeah, and that's interesting
electoral
because
college. That
that would be
it's even
something
more so,
interesting
right?
for us to
Yep.
look at. Are the delegates in the Democratic Party more progressive than they were even 30 or 40 years ago? I mean, if we got into a situation where it was a brokered convention, how many of those delegates are, how many of those delegates would vote for Bernie over Biden? That's what's
Right.
interesting to me. Are they party line kind of establishment people, or are they more progressive? Because we've seen the progressive wing of the party take over a lot nowadays, in recent history. I wonder if there's any real hard data on that.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. Like you said, typically the more extreme side of a party would be the more active, right?
Yeah,
Um, so the moderates tend to not be as active in the party, and that's where the that's where the excitement is and whatever. So possibly they could.
when there's a
Um,
primary, they're bound to that primary system. But if they have a brokered convention,
right.
which hasn't happened in many years, and the makeup of the party has changed drastically, it really would be interesting to see what happens.
Yep, we'll see.
And and the convention isn't a long term thing either. It's not like Congress where there'll be some backroom shifting, but it's not like a week, 2 weeks where they have things to figure out. If you've got people that are radical, and by radical I just mean strong in their opinions, far to the left or far to the right of the party, they'll shift things pretty hard and fast. It'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that might be an argument for there not being Biden not stepping down because you don't know what's going to happen at the convention.
yeah. I mean, all these scenarios are interesting to talk about. We've never encountered it in our lifetimes, right? But I think the scenario, the environment is ripe for it more than any other time. So it could be interesting. Let's go to our final topic, if we can. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about a reform topic, and we touched on campaign finance and Citizens United and money in politics. I think several podcasts ago, and when I was at that democracy convention, I came across, and I've reached out to this organization called American Promise, who's got a constitutional amendment, and we'll read that. Um, and so hopefully we'll have somebody on the show from that organization in the future. But kind of wanted to talk about some of the ways that organizations are trying to deal with the issue of money in politics. And the biggest, as we kind of covered previously, has to do with the First Amendment. That's the biggest thing to sort of work around as part of this, and also whether corporations have rights under the Constitution or sort of
Yeah.
non-natural persons, be it
So
unions or other organizations, whether they actually have rights. So, go ahead.
I just want to specify by saying, you said work around the First Amendment, and I don't think what you meant was, violate the First Amendment or, work around it. I think what you meant was make sure that we come to a solution that has meaningful change within the bounds of the First Amendment, right?
Sure.
I
Uh,
mean,
I'm not a First Amendment
I don't want to
absolutist
put,
like you are,
yeah, I
but
am. I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But I'm just saying, I
No, I
The
believe
idea of
in
compromising on the First Amendment is horrid to me.
yeah. I
That
believe
said,
in
where you're heading here with the finance reform stuff, it has to happen.
right.
It's interpretation of the First Amendment that matters. I think that's what this is about. Interpretation
I
of the First Amendment.
my general belief, and this will come out in my upcoming book, is the First and Second Amendment. We've sort of, and I appreciate those amendments, and I appreciate the rights they've given us. But I tend to think we've tied ourselves in knots over those two to the detriment of the overall good. But you got to be careful, right? You got to be very careful on both of them because you don't want to head down a path. But I think there's hopefully ways to do it where we just don't throw up our hands and say, well, we can't do that. So we'll go through these amendments and see what you like and you don't like. I want to cover what American Promise has, and they've gotten 22 states to sign on, saying they're support state legislatures to say that they're supportive of this amendment, which is a good start. Basically, it would have to go if we're not going to call if the states don't call a constitutional convention themselves, which I don't think has ever happened. Um, the amendment would have to go through Congress and then be ratified by the states, which is the typical process. But the idea is to let Congress know that the states are supportive. So if they do pass it, and there's several amendments that have been raised in Congress, they typically get stuck in committee, and we'll go through. Deb and I were part of this Move to Amend organization, which also has they have a bill in Congress that has 40 or 50 co-sponsors that's been raised. Um, So these things are not pie in the sky. They've made it to uh, our capital, but they haven't been advanced. They've made it to state legislatures. They've gotten local support. There's tons of people talking about this stuff, which is the way you've got to do it. You've got to build support. If you remember the Equal Rights Amendment, that went on for a long time. So it's not an easy process to do, nor it should be. We should be very careful about amending the Constitution. So
Yeah, that's the thing too. You get into a constitutional convention, you might go in there for one thing, and anything is open game, right?
that's the argument you'll hear when you talk to people, and that's why they'd rather bring it up through Congress, where it's a specific item, it's a specific amendment. Because if you call a constitutional convention, basically everything becomes on the table. Is my understanding.
Yep.
Although that might be the case, people argue about it because we've never done it. So
Well, we've done it. There's plenty of amendments to the
no,
Constitution.
but not a constitutional convention except for the original one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Yes. Correct.
So we haven't kind of reopened it, right?
Yep.
So let me go through this. They call it the American Promise calls it the For Our Freedom Amendment. So they're very simple. There's three sections in this one. It says we the people have a compelling sovereign interests in the freedom of speech. I'm good with that. Representative self-government. Yep. Federalism. Yep. The integrity of the electoral process and the political equality of natural persons. Don't have any problem with that. Just stating what we have rights in, right?
That
Any issues?
sounds
That sounds
legit to
good.
me. I'm good.
So, second section. Nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to forbid Congress or the states within their respective jurisdictions from reasonably regulating and limiting contributions and spending in campaigns, elections, or ballot measures. So, in this section, it's saying, yes, we have the First Amendment, but nothing forbids Congress from limiting and regulating contributions and spending. So this goes to the money is speech, right? So
Yeah.
if you're saying Congress or the states can limit spending, are you saying this is a violation of the First Amendment?
What concerns me about that language when I saw it was you can regulate to favor. That's the problem.
What do you mean by that? Give me an example.
Um, so you are on the right side of the aisle and you favor big banks. So you decide to regulate spending and campaign contributions for everybody but big banks. Or you're on the left side of the aisle and you decide you're going to favor or you're going to regulate campaign spending for everybody but those who support the green movement because we have to save Mother Earth. That's what concerns me,
So it's a
right?
way for people in power to stay in power by decreasing the spending that would go to the opposing parties.
Exactly. I mean, if you own the
It
House
does
or the
say
Senate or both,
reasonably. It does say reasonably.
what's reasonably?
Well, I don't think that would be reasonable. I don't think that would be equitable, right? You are clearly targeting one or the other, right?
Yeah. So I think you need some terminology to say, and I'm not a lawyer here, so I don't I don't know if I can say it legally, but I mean, for one rule fits all, right? Just like tax code, I made the argument for a flat tax, 15% of what you make, maybe less, across the board. I don't care if you're a business or an individual. I don't care if you make $1 a year or $100 billion a year, 15% across the board. Same thing. I mean, if you're going to do this, you have to have some language that says
Well,
it's going to be maximum $200 a person or entity, whatever it happens to be, or $200 a person. Any collective bit of individual, whether it's union, business, special interest, whatever, you can't donate. Something along those lines. Cool. I'm all for it, man. But you have to make sure there is no wiggle room, no air for any little bit of favoritism in there because if there is, it will happen.
well, here's the thing, Bob. Just like any other part of the Constitution, we do have a judiciary system, right? So again, that would
But the judiciary system needs things to not be broad, and reasonable is a very
well,
broad term.
well, the Constitution is very broad too. You can't be too specific. So you just want to make sure, and I understand your point. It's a good point. But again, you could get into the weeds on some of these things, and I don't think that's the point of an amendment. Um, I suppose you can introduce other language that says it's not intended to target certain or be favorable to one party or the other, something along those lines where it's more
Why not
clear.
just make the amendment to say people only, not a collective, but individuals only, and the limit is going to be, I don't know, 1% of GDP, or you know what I mean, like 1% of your income, something like that. I don't, and maybe if you do a percentage of income, that's difficult for people who make $1 billion a year versus people who make $30,000 a year, right? There's got to be some kind of specific level set.
But I guess the point is, if you're going to do a constitutional amendment, that's not easy to change. So if you're being more specific, then you could box yourself into a corner that
But
you
that's the
might want to.
point. We want to
No,
box
it's
ourselves
not.
into a corner, don't we?
The point is to create a standard to say that states and Congress have the ability to do this, which the Supreme Court has said is unconstitutional. That's why there needs to be an amendment to the Constitution. So no, it's not to get specific. It's basically saying we want to be able to do this. We don't have the standard. We're going to let Congress and states decide what works, but we want to lay out the fact that we could do this. Let me
Yeah,
go on
and
to the
this
third
is
point on this.
a situation too, though. And I know you want to go on, but if you're letting if you're letting states create the rules in a federal election, I'm all for states creating the rules for state elections. But if you're letting states create the rules for a federal election, you may have California saying
I don't think that's what we're
the
talking
green
about here
movement
because it says within their
and
respective jurisdictions.
yeah, okay. As long as it's state, I don't want different rules among states for a federal election.
No, I don't. I don't think that's what they're getting at. So I hear you. You want a little bit more specificity, so it's not. So it's a little bit clearer. It's kind of too
Yeah.
broad.
I'm all
Um,
for I'm all for cutting businesses and unions out of the yeah, the lobbyists, right? The lobbyism
Well,
of the
that's
government
section
because it's ridiculous. It's
that
a problem.
that's section 3 here, which is Congress and the states shall have the power to implement and enforce this article by appropriate legislation and may distinguish between natural persons and artificial entities, including by prohibiting artificial entities from raising and spending money in campaigns, elections, or ballot measures. It doesn't deal with lobbying, which is kind of beside the. I mean, there's other anti-corruption bills and whatnot. This is targeting campaign finance, and Citizens United, and all the dark money and whatnot. So that's just basically saying they have the ability to say corporations and unions and artificial entities are not people. They don't have rights under the Second Amendment or under the First Amendment. So you can, or any of the
Yeah,
Constitution. So we can basically cut them off completely
yeah.
if we decide to do that.
I think the amendment should just absolutely say, let's cut them off completely. Just cut them off.
Yeah, yeah,
Because again, and that goes back to what I was saying before, right? Because what if they decide to regulate it by saying, if you make $1 billion a year or more, you can donate 5%, right? If you make less than that, you can donate less. Yeah, it's just, or even if they say everybody gets to donate 5% if they're a business, they decide to do it that way. They enrich themselves, and then obviously the bigger businesses have an advantage, and it almost creates monopolies without creating monopolies until the monopoly is created as a result. That's what concerns me. I think you need very specific language in there just to say no business money, no union money. Probably we need to get rid of some of the dark money packs as well. I mean, you got to get specific. You got to get more specific.
well, that's interesting that you want an even stronger language. You don't want to leave it up to Congress or the states. You want it in the amendment, very specified. Which
Yep.
so let's go on to the second one, which I think is a little bit. I think For Our Freedom is a little bit broader than Move to Amend. So Move to Amend. This is their amendment. They do it in 3 sections also. The rights and privileges protected and extended by the Constitution of the United States are the rights and privileges of natural persons only. Very specific. An artificial entity, such as a corporation, limited liability company, or other entity established by the laws of any states, the United States, or any foreign state, shall have no rights under the Constitution and are subject to regulation by the people through federal, state, or local law. So this is very specific. It's saying they don't have any rights. It's
Yeah. The
not
only
leaving
thing I
it up
see
to the
there.
states.
Yep. I like it overall. So when I was thinking about that earlier, my only concern is making sure that we establish that artificial entity includes business, unions, special interest groups, so on and so forth. And by special interest groups, and I might catch some flack for this, but I mean, I'm like Mothers Against Drunk Driving is a special interest group, right? There's plenty of green and left movements that are special interest groups. There's
Yeah.
uh, Chamber of Commerce. It's a right-leaning special interest group. NRA. It's a special interest group, right? All of that. None of them should. All of them, whether it's a special interest group like that, a large company, or a union, same pile. They're all artificial entities. If we could make sure we clarify that, that'd be a little bit. I'd like to see that.
The privileges of an artificial entity shall be determined by the people through federal, state, or local law and shall not be construed to be inherent or inalienable. All right, that's Article 1. Section 2. Federal, state, and local government shall regulate, limit, or prohibit contributions and expenditures, including a candidate's own contributions and expenditures, to ensure that all citizens, regardless of their economic status, have access to the political process and that no person gains, as a result of that person's money, substantially more access or ability to influence in any way the election of any candidate for public office or any ballot measure. That's a
So how do
lot.
you how
I
do you
don't know how you do
regulate
that.
that?
I
Yeah.
don't know how you do that. That's that's yeah.
I, I feel like that's kind of padding on top of what was said above, because I think most of what was said above kind of captures that problem anyway. If people can't donate money, I feel
Well,
like that part is more like backdoor deals sort of
well,
thing. Like it's just another mechanism to charge charge for kickbacks, which probably is already there anyway. But
I think this even gets down to the individual level. So the first one's basically saying artificial entities don't have rights under the Constitution, and they're only given the rights that we give them. Number two is states and local governments, state, federal, have to regulate political contributions, and they should do such that everyone has an equal voice. It sounds good, very difficult to do, I think.
so
Um,
just uh, not to shortcut you, but shortcut the conversation. I mean, easiest way to do it would be to say no more political contributions. If you're running for president, you get $5 million of taxpayer money. If you're running for senator, you get $2 million of taxpayer money. If you're running for rep, you get $1.5 million of taxpayer money. Any other federal office, you get $750,000 of taxpayer money. That's it.
and my thought would be these amendments open the door for that to be done. I don't necessarily think you want to be that specific in an amendment
You could probably
because
tie it
you
to
might
like
change your mind.
you could add cola, right? Or inflation something in there. But the reason I like that and the reason it'll never pass for the same reason is it completely shuts down lobbyism. It'll shut down the lobbyists because there's no, that's a lot of money right there, right? From an economic perspective, it will completely end political ads, which will hurt the media organizations a lot.
I
It'll hurt
think
the airline business, right? It'll hurt the bank. It'll hurt everybody because of all the money that runs through the economy because of this BS. Because that's what it's really about. And that's why it'll never happen. I shouldn't talk that way because that's what we're going to fight for. I We need to get to this point. I'm being very cynical here, and I'll fight to get to this point or to that point. But I that's where we need to get. I mean, taxpayer money, everybody equal ground. I don't care if you're right, left, brand new party, right? Same money from the taxpayer
I
done.
think part of the reasons why some of these amendments don't get that specific because, as you pointed out, once you get into the weeds on some of these things, it becomes much less palatable for passing. I think the point that they're trying to bring in is let's at least clarify the rights under the Constitution, which is kind of the first step, and then we could argue about the details later. But let's get the Constitution clear that we could at least talk about doing this without it being raised as a constitutional issue. I know you're trying to get both of them together, but I don't think any of these amendments will be that specific. But it's like you want to cover both in one kind of fell swoop. I think they're thinking it's difficult enough just to get this, let alone, like you said, if you get more specific, then you're going to have even more resistance by
Yeah,
someone.
I'm afraid that by going halfway, you make it much more difficult to go the whole way, and potentially you make things worse. But if you,
Oh, I don't think you make it worse.
I, again,
I, I mean, these amendments do not change the law. You still
no,
have to write a law, right? You still have to, like you said, limit this, this, and this. All this is doing is saying you're able to do such within the confines of the Constitution because we
yeah.
have this amendment. I think that's
So
all
maybe
we're
you
looking
say
for here.
Congress has the right to make the change. I think one and two on the Second Amendment were pretty solid.
So you like the move to amend one better than the
I just want to make it
leave it be.
clear. Yes, I do.
So let me finish with that one. There's a couple more lines. Federal, state, and local governments shall require that any permissible contribution expenditures be publicly disclosed. So that's a good one, right? You like disclosure.
Yep.
The judiciary shall not construe the spending of money to influence elections to be speech under the First Amendment. So that directly addresses the judiciary saying money's not speech, which I think we've talked about before, but seems like you're more open to it today.
Yeah.
And then the
Well,
third section says this amendment shall not be construed to abridge the right secured by the Constitution of the United States of the freedom of press, which I think is good to put in there, but I don't know how you do that. So if
so
somebody buys a newspaper, right? If a candidate
yeah.
buys a newspaper and spends tons of money giving out free newspapers, is that freedom of the press? I mean, I don't know, right?
Well, I think so. I mean, the
Right.
press can do what it wants to do. It's the candidate giving out the free newspapers. Now, of course, the press is going to cater to that candidate, knowing that that candidate's going to buy a bunch of newspapers, but that candidate hopefully is very limited on funds because they're not getting funds from these big entities anymore. Going
Yeah.
back, going back to the first part of this recent section where you said the federal government and the states will limit. I don't think I like the term states because I think the states uh, you're restricting rights of the states and you're going back on state rights there. So that needs to be amended a little bit. The amendment needs to be amended a little bit. You can't limit states should have the right to let whatever they want to let happen within their state elections. So you need to specify for federal elections this will not happen.
So you don't like the Constitution covering what state and local governments do?
The Constitution isn't a bunch of rights. It's for government, it's a restriction on what the government can do, right? It's not rights for people. The Constitution is strictly a restriction on what the government can do to people, right? What the
Eh,
government can impose on people. That's how I look at it. So yes,
well,
I think the Constitution should not limit in any manner the states. And I don't know, is there an amendment in the Constitution that says states can't do this?
well,
I
these
know
amendments are definitely pointing to state and local governments and what they should do and what they shall require. So,
I'm all, and that's where it gets tricky, right?
well, this one
If
is. The
if
other
somebody
one
running
said
for a
within their
state
jurisdictions.
position, somebody's running for a state position, I don't care what Kansas wants to dictate for its representatives in Kansas at the state level. I do care that those running for Congress, federal Congress from Kansas, I do care that they have the same rules that somebody running for federal Congress from California. I mean, that matters, right? Or at a presidential level, you shouldn't have Kansas saying, a president has to have belief one, two, and three, and California saying a president has to make sure that they've done A, B, and C before we allow them on our ballot. I mean, that's garbage, right? And so you're getting into the territory where you allow states to regulate things like that. It can get kind of tricky. So you shouldn't really have it in there at all.
Although I think the Constitution talks about states too. So, yeah, I mean, states have their own constitutions, um, but I think, I yeah, I think states will ultimately determine it because they run their own elections. But the second one's more prescriptive in regards to they shall do this, they shall publicly disclose. They are telling the states what they need to do, sort of things. They're not telling them exactly how to do it, but they're saying that they need to do it, which I guess at the end of the day I'm okay with, because at the end of the day they actually get to decide what the laws are within their prospective jurisdictions. So I don't think it's overreach by the federal constitution. but it is kind of laying the groundwork for what they need to be doing. So, I mean, there's been other amendments. If you look at the history of this, it's being brought up quite a bit. There's some momentum behind some of these things. I think everyone knows or realizes we have to do something about the money in politics issue. And the crux of it, at least from the Supreme Court rulings, has been, well, the Constitution lets it kind of be a free rein at this point. So the movements themselves say, well, the only way we're going to do this is to get a constitutional amendment. And that's a big hurdle.
Yeah, and I think we need
And
to do it. I absolutely support that. I'll support any candidate who says we need to get an amendment to get the money out of politics. I will do that. I'm very reluctant or hesitant to do that for anything that isn't very specific.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've gotten constitutional scholars. I mean, these organizations are, some of them are pretty well funded. They've got some very good legal experts and governmental experts involved and on their boards and whatnot. It's not kind of a pie in the sky effort. I've met with several of them. They're organizations. They've got people, employees in all the states. They've got volunteers in all the states. So it's not, like I said, it's there's organization around it. These are all issues, and hopefully we'll have somebody on and you can ask them why they haven't gotten more specific, and they can address why they've kind of gone in this direction versus being more specific. So hopefully
Yeah, it'd
we'll
be
have a
great.
couple people on, and we'll get more. But I thought I wanted to present that because I view that as I've always viewed that as kind of a primary issue in fixing our government, including sort of term limits, money in politics, and sort of anti-corruption issues. I think those are, to me, the three pillars of cleaning things up and making things better, and moving us forward. So I definitely think this is an important issue. So hopefully we'll have somebody on and we can talk further about this in the future. But for now, you need to get ready. You need to pack for your trip, your Thanksgiving trip.
Head
Pack the girls
north.
up, the family roadster, and head north. And we'll see you in a couple days. Everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in December. Don't
Yeah,
eat too much turkey.
I'm planning on bringing a special wine to drink with.
All right.
Actually, it's like a anniversary wine. It was rated 96 points.
Awesome.
Looking forward to sharing it with everybody. So
All right.
happy Thanksgiving.
I'll be there. Take care, Bob.
Take care.